another Chupacabra sighting.
Good morning from Sand Hollow. Nick and Dominic back at it. Starting off the day in the 1000R model. Just got to run our first 5 or 10 minutes of some whoops. Sand Hollow is pretty wet right now, so I like that for testing the vehicle because you're hitting the whoops harder. It's not as soft. You can kind of feel what the car is doing a little bit better. So that's what's pretty good. Power feels pretty good so far. Just getting used to how the car feels. You can definitely feel the whip compared to a Razor 1000, and man, got treated to some amazing conditions so far today. It rained a ton yesterday.
Plenty more rider to go. We're just getting started here first thing in the morning, so we're starting the day off in the R model, and then later this afternoon we're going to swap. There's 2 separate groups, so we'll get our chance at trying the X as well.
Yeah, first impressions, the power feels good, and a lot of engine braking compared to a CVT, so definitely different feel, but everything feels really tight. Really like the sound of the car too.
Yep, sounds cool. And the interior, as far as the fit, feel, and finish in regard to noise and chatter, there isn't much, which is kind of nice too. You don't hear anything really rattling, bouncing around, so it keeps things nice and quiet and sounds kind of really nice and tight.
Alright, so first hour and a half in the new R model so far. Initial impressions, I think just to start off from first getting in it, compared to a Razor 1000, it feels no bigger, maybe slightly smaller. I'm a tall guy, I've got 34-inch inseam. The dead pedal felt a little bit closer with the seat all the way back. Felt pretty comfortable. Steering wheel definitely feels stiffer than a Razor 1000, I felt like. Just kind of initial, like what I thought about getting in it, the doors feel good. It'd be nice to have a knee pad because, like I said, a little tight, and I think if you're taller than me, something you should sit in real quick.
Yeah, I think the seats, comparing to other cars that we've gotten a chance to drive before, the seats look good. They're made of good material, comfortable padding for your back. The lower part, the base of the seat where your bum rests, pretty short, and I'm a small guy, tall, small, and I don't really feel like that in the car. I don't really feel like it really hugs you or welcomes that kind of sporty feel. So
I felt like I was trying to scoot back in the seat as much as I
always
could, and I wish the base was a couple inches longer, and as it leads to the cockpit being just big enough, I think an aftermarket seat's going to take up a little more space.
Yep.
Driving, we started off with some fast whoops. Felt good. You can definitely feel that it's wider. The back end felt a little stiff, like the car was a little high. I think my first thought was the back end felt stiff, I'd lower the ride height maybe.
Yeah, and I think if there was some rebound adjustment to maybe adjust that, because through some of the fast whoops, even though it is a longer wheelbase on the R, some of these whoops at speed, you still tend to pack the rear, and you're constantly just kind of bucking through every single whoop along the trail. So we made a little adjustment. There's the 1, 2, and 3 settings on the front and rear shock. So we went all the way soft mode in this last half of the trail so far. It's made a difference with some of the suppleness and kind of that initial harsh bump absorption. So yeah, it's nice to notice, you know, right out of the gate.
The rear end, you know, I would lower the back of the car a little bit, and I'd bump up the crossover rings, and in the soft setting, it would be,
I think it would
I mean,
nice.
You're talking free, 10 minutes, so.
Absolutely.
It didn't bottom, it just felt like it got into the mid-stroke and felt a little harsh, in my opinion. But power feels good, it feels fun.
Paddles are fun.
The transmission feels really tight. It feels like just really robust and firm. It's interesting to get used to guys driven the CVT exclusively, the engine braking. And you know, like even breaking the car loose, you kind of have to be smoother with your throttle, smoother, slow speed in the rocks.
Yeah, absolutely. The automatic sport mode's handy. It just lets you just drive. You don't have to worry about the paddles, but they're there for you to use it and override it whenever you want, which is cool. And then the manual, just without the automatic mode, kind of boasts a different driving experience entirely, because obviously it relies on you to shift, but it also takes away some of that engine braking he was just saying. So there's a little bit less pitch. So for those of you that want to really get in tune with driving and time your shifts correctly and get into corners the right way, I think it kind of gives you two different platforms to practice your driving on.
Mm-hmm. In the rocks, real quick, you know, we did rub a little bit. 28-inch tires, I think 30s would make a big difference. The rocks are a little wet or less grippy than they normally are, and you can just see like a more aggressive tread pattern. You can feel a little more feedback to the car, I think, too, because the tires aren't as robust as most of our aftermarket offerings that we all run.
Yeah, that extra 2-inch of tire will help a lot.
But good so far, really fun. I mean, amazing day.
Perfect.
And a great spot to test. I mean, you got a little bit of everything. We just rode for an hour and a half and we tested a lot of different environments.
Pretty big range of terrain.
We're gonna do some more riding. We'll check in later. So it's the end of the day. We talked about our first initial impressions of the cockpit, comfort, all the little nuances of being in the vehicle as it relates to other side-by-sides on the market. And from there, we finished up our ride on the R model, rode on the X, really realized how similar everything is other than the suspension components. So the motor characteristic was essentially the same. It was hard to tell if it was exact. I would assume maybe on the X model, they would soften it up a little since it's more for trail use, but it's also had an aggressive hit. This thing handles really well. It's really flat, it stays really flat for not having a sway bar. They focus a lot on the precision handling, and I think they did really well. It doesn't feel vague.
Agreed. Really torquey driving experience, as you mentioned. They do, in regard to having the different options or different modes to drive in, whether having full manual and using the paddles or using kind of the automatic shifts, it still allows you to kind of drive the car however which way you want, and really harnessing each gear effectively and really having that power and torque download to get you out of really tight, twisty corners, especially in the X model, which is kind of what it's meant for. It really kind of boasts into a more fun and enjoyable driving experience today, for sure.
Yeah, very fun shifting. I ended up going in the automatic mode with a automatic sport mode, shifting gears, tried manual mode. It was fun. The additional engine braking compared to a CVT takes a little while to use as a driver. It'd take me a couple more rides to get used to being smoother on the throttle, especially to prevent that jerkiness because it's so torquey off the bottom.
Yeah, that's something, you know, in some of the rocky sections that we encountered today, you're trying to be light on the gas, but each little jolt in the cockpit you feel as the driver really translates into you accidentally maybe punching the gas pedal a little bit, and you can obviously feel the torque even more in those instances.
But shifting gears, first, second gear was a smooth transmission.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Third gear definitely pulled really well.
Yeah. I mean, what are some other things you think? What are the standout traits that you really enjoy about this car in specific?
Sounds simple, but these front mud fender flares and the door coverage kept us incredibly dry.
Couldn't agree
The
more.
beginning of the morning, we got a lot of rain yesterday. I'm bringing extra rain suits. We thought we were going to be covered.
Yeah.
We ended up having an amazing day, but we were going through some puddles pretty fast, and we stayed really clean.
I mean, you can obviously kind of see the car now. It's not the cleanest, and you would expect just with the smallest puddles that something might come into the cockpit, but nothing.
And just overall the build quality of the car. I mean, even the accessories, there wasn't a rattle, there wasn't a squeak. It's the quality that we would expect from Honda for sure.
Yep, it stays true through both models, the R and the X.
I thought the motor was good and strong, as I would expect for about 105 horsepower naturally aspirated vehicle to be. I love all the power and torque was down low, had a lot of torque. And that leads to the transmission. It felt really tight and robust.
Yep.
As it relates to overall power, I thought it's similar to an XP1000. You got a good power and torque to about 40, 45 miles an hour, and then it tends to sign off a little.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what you have to do with an OEM vehicle for the restrictions. It would be nice if this can be opened up with some tuning, whether it's an exhaust, mapping, an extra 10, 15 horse, just to let it pull a little bit harder in fourth gear. You know, I think because of the nature of the motor, we might be able to get a lot of power for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, an exhaust and a tuner, kind of like a YXZ. You know, I'm not that technical when it comes to horsepower gains, but I'm hopeful that gaining an extra 5-10% would not be having to break the bank in terms of getting into the head of the car.
I'm assuming exhaust, just like any other manufacturer, the exhaust sounds, the car sounds good, don't get me wrong, it's really a unique tone, engine tone, but looking at the muffler and stuff in the back, you can tell it's probably pretty restricted. So opening that up will probably be a big
Yeah, and I say that just to have a little more power for the dunes. This will go anywhere in Glamis, the two-seat right now. It really will. Of course, you want more. You want to shoot the hill faster. It's not going to win the hill shootout right now, but it's similar to a naturally aspirated, you know, 110 horsepower Razor 1000, which is honestly if we're talking about this price point, this type of vehicle, the vehicle we're going against.
Yeah.
So I'd like a little more power, of course, just to pull harder in fourth and longer up those soft hills, duning, trail riding. I thought it was good. The low end torque I liked.
Yeah. How about suspension? What do you think?
Suspension was pretty good overall. In my opinion, the X model was better. The X model, first off, both of these are on the stiff side, which as a whole I like, because that means Honda really catered this to an aggressive driving. We were driving pretty hard. There's 3 modes. We ran the soft mode in the X model. We bottomed out the rear a couple times, and we should have.
Right.
We're in some
fast.
chatter going up and some sandy, subtract off of some G-outs.
Drop off G-outs.
I'd probably never use mode 3 in either car.
Because I think it's a little bit too much on the stiff side. And as he mentioned, how they're valve and sprung in stock trim, going to that third mode probably just result in a harsh driving experience. And number 1 in the soft mode really helped improve the ride overall.
So yeah, to sum up suspension, X model, both models, nice small bump compliance for stock. I still think an aftermarket spring kit and valving is really where you're gonna get a lot more comfort. I liked how the X, we did bottom it, and it was fun. It didn't sway. They both handled really well for not having a front sway bar. I really was impressed by that.
Really very, very minimal body roll, if any at all. It kind of stayed flat. It tracked well. Some of the two track corners that got pretty deep and rutted, didn't really feel like you were gonna maybe pop out of them. They stayed planted and let you kind of get to the next section pretty efficiently.
Moving on to the R model, of course you can feel the wheelbase and the width.
Yeah.
But we both agreed that the rear was too stiff. First thing I would do is I'd probably lower the back of the car a little bit, maybe a ½ an inch. I'd bump the crossover rings up about an inch, because it's not much further off the coupler when you're at stock ride height. So we're running on the stiffer spring out of the get-go. For stock springs, again, I thought even the R model was pretty compliant over the chatter washboard. It could be a lot better, just with every other stock OEM shock. I'd try those 2 things, and I do think this, again, is designed for aggressive driving, and it'd be different. And we're talking a full-size spare on the back, some accessories, maybe some riders that are heavier.
Yeah.
Then you're weighing the back of the car, and you're getting into zones, because I do want to bottom out my car once a ride, right? Get to the soft settings, see where we're at, and move around from there. So that was kind of my initial impression. Had a little bit of a stink bug feel, but definitely appreciated
braking,
the
you know, we mentioned that engine brake, how this car, when downshifting in sport mode or manual, really kind of pitched the front end forward, which helps in some handling characteristics, not all. I think is just a little too much, a little too aggressive, and how the rear is set up, sprung or valved, it just made it a little bit, even more, like a little bit worse than it should be. So getting a little bit more suppleness would help, I think, overall.
As it relates to suppleness, I think with the 28-inch tires and 15-inch rims, you don't have a lot of sidewall, and it was translating a lot of that harshness, which didn't do the suspension much favor. Some nice, more robust 30-inch tires, but you definitely feel a lot more cushion. One little bit of downside is the engineers say they don't recommend, or you can't put 14-inch wheels. As most of us know, that's got the most aftermarket offerings. There's still plenty of offerings out there for a 15 and a 30. I would prefer a 14 and a 30 to get that extra sidewall,
Yeah.
but they don't recommend it or it's not going to fit. So 30s on some 15s, some more aggressive tires, some heavier tires that most of us in the real world would run, would make the car a lot more compliant as well.
Absolutely. We mentioned just kind of the feel of the cockpit inside, you know, keeping in mind of the seating and kind of how that relates to some of the other competition on the market. I think there's a little bit of room for improvement for overall comfort inside the car as well.
Yeah, the biggest concern is I'd love to do some aftermarket seats, even those are high quality. We talked about how they're not long enough. Well, then you're going to take up a little bit more cockpit space and it's already tight.
Yeah.
So I think honestly, if you are, I'm 6'3", 6'2.5", if you're my height or taller, sit in this thing. You know, let us know what you think in the comments. I mean, I think some taller guys are going to have some challenges with it. It's definitely smaller than an X3,
Yeah.
but it's pretty well known that X3s are huge in the cockpit world.
And I'm a small guy, so
size.
I'm only 5'7" when I hang upside down. But my seat was almost all the way in the very furthest back position, so that kind of gives you an example of what we're talking about.
This is a great platform to build on, and it's a unique driving experience. You know, shifting is fun.
It is fun. It's a different experience, and they're entering a very competitive landscape with what's out on the market currently. And for a first model vehicle, we have to give them some props. Obviously, things have come a long way since the initial Rhino, if you want to call it, and everything else in between since then. But for a first true sport side-by-side, knowing how serious Honda takes their R&D, their testing, and their development to try to continue to be better and maintain themselves at the upper echelon of the competitors, I'm confident for sure that these cars are just going to continue to get better over time.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing Honda's commitment to the off-road community with the off-road motorcycle models. We've been both riding motocross dirt bikes for over 20 years. I mean, this is targeted to a guy like us, right? We all love the dirt. We all started off in the dirt probably before a side-by-side. And
Yeah.
I think what I'm feeling from the marketing group is they're going to kind of target a lot of people, maybe new, other gearheads from other on-road, two wheels,
Yeah.
ATVs, which I think is brilliant. And it's also a great opportunity to put another vehicle in the market that's not the exact same thing as a CVT driven. Not that there's anything wrong, but kudos to them for not trying to make another Razor 1000, right?
Exactly.
They had to do something different and differentiated. A great first effort. I mean, comparatively to the first Yamaha, I like this better. I had my doubts about will it shift well enough? Can I control the power? Because I really liked the YXZ, how you could fan the power like a dirt bike.
Yeah.
But I really thought that the automatic sport mode shifting was on point.
It was.
It was good most of the time.
It is.
And you can always grab a gear or two, and most times the automatic I thought was pretty accurate.
It's tuned correctly.
Real quick, we didn't talk about rock crawling. Four-wheel drive seemed like it worked really well.
Oh yeah, we did get into some really slow.
Nothing too gnarly. I've been back behind here, and it gets hairy.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you can't compare it to like Moab, which we've ridden before.
30-inch tires. You know, obviously we drug a little.
A couple times, a few minor kind of scrapes from in the belly pan, things like that, which then also kind of goes into your head of you're always kind of thinking, am I going to clear it, versus having something a little bit taller tire-wise. Which kind of eliminates that worry even more. So, but as far as performance, crawling through rocks, no issue.
Four-wheel drive so far. I mean, we didn't get into it that much, but it worked really well. We're taking videos of other guys going up and the tires are spinning, working as a four-wheel drive system would work.
Yeah.
As it comes to side of line, what really matters when you're in the rocks, the nose is a little harder to see over than a Razor, in my opinion. I think the Razor is still the king of visibility when you really need it when you're in the rocks.
Yeah.
Significantly better than the CanAm, and marginally a little bit more difficult to see out of than the Polaris.
Yep.
Yeah, one final thought. I know in the previous videos I mentioned, will we be able to run 32s? They said it's out of the question. They haven't even tested on a 32.
They have not.
If you guys watch the channel, you know I love 32s. I'm all about them. So if you are building this up as a rock crawler, it would probably suck too much power out of the vehicle.
Yeah, rob it.
You might not get, you probably for sure won't have clearance on an X model, probably the R, but then you probably run into some other issues. So, you know, that's what it is. I think if a customer is buying this, have the expectation that you're going to run 30s.
Yep, 30s is where they're kind of maxing out for now.
Thanks for watching. If you guys like the content, please like and subscribe and comment below. Let us know what you think. We've got more great content coming your way.
Another Chupacabra sighting.
I've never run across anything like this.
Do you believe in the Chupacabra?